we go through the types of communication to develop intimacy, to develop trust, as we've seen from levels 1, 2, 3, and just introduced level 4, where we're talking about learning to listen to feelings, learning to listen to emotions, learning that words sometimes get in the way. In our next session, this session right now, I would ordinarily take a couple through a bit of revision where we'd go through and we'd revise this. We'd also be looking at the homework, looking at how you were able to employ the principles of understand before being understood, how you would employ the principles of learning to listen to the heart that's behind the words that we used without just hearing words, so that you're actually beginning to hear heart, you're beginning to hear motive. So in doing that, in this session, we begin to introduce some other aspects where communication is going to be necessary. And the first of these is going to be financial. So one of the things that I'm going to do is talk to a couple about how they should, and I'm going to recommend how they should manage their finances once they're married. Because sometimes a couple has the idea that when they get married, every bank account they have now becomes a joint bank account. And I'm actually going to make a recommendation about that when it comes to your finances. So if you're a young couple and you're about to embark on marriage, again, congratulations. And if you've been going through these videos, I trust that you've been finding them helpful as you're investing in your marriage, not just your wedding day. And I know the wedding day can be very consuming, and every bride particularly wants to have a nice wedding day. But now we're talking about investing in your marriage. And one of the areas where you're going to need to begin to use these communication skills that we've been talking about over these last few sessions is in regard to how you handle your money. So here's my recommendation. I would recommend that couples do have joint bank accounts, but not just joint bank accounts. And here's my reasoning. I would recommend that nearly every account that you have as a couple is in both names. But, and it's a big but, here's the but one of you is responsible for that particular bank account, that particular joint account. Now, there's two really good reasons for this. Number one is when one person is managing the finances, especially in today's day and age when we're not using cash anymore, we're using cards and things like that, and internet banking and so on. When one person manages that account, they have a better idea of what is maybe scheduled to be paid, or what has just been paid and doesn't yet show up on the bank statement, doesn't even show up on the internet banking yet, because it's going to take a few hours for it to come through. And that just right there can save a lot of embarrassment. And I could share stories with you how couples have got into all kinds of bother because they've both been using the same key card, and the other partner has just spent the last dollar, and the other, and you go to, put something on it and there's nothing there. And it's not a credit card, it's a key card. And so this can be really, really embarrassing. So I would recommend that you have joint accounts. And in fact, I would strongly recommend that you have multiple bank accounts, designated joint bank accounts. And when I say designated, I mean you've got designated accounts where those accounts form the savings goal. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Here's the other really good reason to have joint bank accounts. And again, I'm stressing that they're joint in the legal sense, but not in the functional sense. The reason is, in the unfortunate, in the tragic, in the regrettable situation where one partner dies, there can be all kinds of difficulty if you have an understanding that your accounts are shared, but they're in one or the other name. it can be done, but it can be a legal minefield to try and get through and rightfully claim what you would ordinarily expect would be yours anyway. And so having things in joint names makes it a whole lot easier in the unforeseen, in the tragic, in the hope it never happens moment when if one partner dies, then it just simplifies things. All right, so I recommend joint accounts, but I recommend functionally one or the other manages that account. So what that's going to look like is that you have your money to use how you see fit, and not only that, you actually work off a budget. Now, this would be, at this point, would be the homework, and I think at some point I'll upload the sheet that I give every couple as homework to take away and come back next week. We're now into the final weeks leading up to the marriage. The first few sessions have been every 4 weeks or so. Now we're dealing in week by week matters. And so in this sense, you're going to come back next week and have this budget completed. Now, I'll give you some advice here with this. I have found that especially young couples will not appreciate the costs associated with doing life. So here's some things that are in categories in the blank budget template that I give every couple. And they include things like insurances, they include things like rates, that these are the things, the utilities, the costs that the local municipality or the council is going to require that you pay to live where you live. Now, you may be renting where that's not an issue for you, but you're still going to have utilities, you're still going to have your electricity bill, perhaps your gas bill, your water bill, and so on. So in taking into account those things, I would then recommend, and as I'll say to a couple, they'll sometimes present me with their budget, this is it, and we've got a little bit left over. I will ask this question: are you going to take a holiday? Ever? Maybe not every year, but maybe it is every year. Are you anticipating taking a holiday? If so, how much will that cost you? Because you'll need invariably holidays, if you go away, will always cost you something. So think that one through and annualize it so that you can say, well, if we're going to spend $2,000 over that holiday period, we need to save $40 a week. That's what I mean by annualizing. So there's the homework, to work out what's going to come in, what's going to go out. Do we have a problem when we look at it on paper? So that's the homework. And when we come back next week, in our next session, we're going to introduce another aspect to how we're actually going to employ these communication principles that we've already looked at. But the communication principles are the foundation for preparing for your marriage. Now, you may be thinking, I thought you said there was 5 levels of communication. We've only done 4. And well done. And yes, there are 5, but we don't do the 5th one until the final week of your wedding. So the week of your wedding is when we introduce the 5th session, because it is the most intimate. It is potentially dangerous if you don't get it right, but it's potentially the most enriching thing you'll ever hear and you'll ever learn about having a relationship, and particularly the most important relationship you'll ever have, and that's your marriage relationship. So just to give you a little bit of a roadmap, in our next session, we're going to talk about making a wish list, setting some goals. And then as we approach the wedding, we're going to, in that session, the homework is I would be presenting a couple with the wedding vows. And in the weddings that I do, generally, I'm giving them 2 sets of vows. I'm giving them the opportunity, if they wanted to say something in the ceremony as far as a promise to each other, that kind of thing, they can develop that. They can do that. I've had couples who've written poems to each other. I've had couples who've written prayers. I've had couples who have declared their love in a way that has been appropriate in the wedding ceremony. But those things are in addition to what we're doing, because the wedding vows are something that are, in my opinion, sacred. They are the highest commitment you'll ever make to someone else. And as a Christian, I'm going to encourage couples to, here's the word, triangulate their vows. That is, they're going to bring God into it. And from my point of view, as a couple, makes God their focus of their marriage, not each other, and they are coming closer to God. You see the proximity to each other. They get closer. And so that's what we're going to be talking about, how the wedding vows give that roadmap for what that can look like. So that'll be in the next session. So for this, the homework is going to be develop a budget, what comes in and what goes out. And I'll see you in our next session.